I think both of his watches are broken. There's no 50% of Canadians willing to give up Canada.
The meltdown is in full effect. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories here. We've got the Quebec Liberal Caucus now calling for Trudeau to resign. That's now 3 Liberal caucuses, the Ontario, the Quebec, and the Atlantic caucuses, calling for Justin Trudeau to resign. What will he do? So this has been posted multiple places, but we've got this one here from Melissa Lantzman saying every single one of these MPs supported the Prime Minister just 2 weeks ago with full confidence until they realized that they would lose their jobs. Every single one supported the out-of-control spending bureaucracy that doubled housing costs, the out-of-control immigration that led to refugee camps opening in suburban Canada, and the 500,000 people are in the country illegally. The out-of-control crime that's taken over the streets with pew-pew crime having doubled the out-of-control hard candy and disorder that led to over 47,000 people who've perished from overdoses. This isn't an act of bravery. These MPs are responsible for the last 9 years of chaos. So that is 100% on point. All of these Liberal MPs have supported Justin Trudeau through all of this. Not just one scandal, 2 scandals, all 75 plus scandals. They have supported this guy through and through. This is getting posted everywhere. You can see Liberal Caucus, Atlantic Caucus, and Ontario Caucus calling for Trudeau to resign. We've got this article from iPolitics. It says Quebec Caucus calls for Trudeau to resign. The Quebec Liberal MP who requested anonymity, come on, coward, speak up. To speak freely, said the provincial caucus didn't have a full meeting, but there was a smaller group discussions since the House rose on December 17th. A consensus was reached that the Prime Minister needs to step down. Caucus Chair Stéphane Lauzon had been instructed to inform Trudeau of this decision, the MP said. They said Lauzon sent a letter to Executive Caucus made up of the leadership of other caucuses of the Quebec decision, which was confirmed by another Quebec Liberal MP. Ontario and Atlantic caucuses have given similar conclusions already. Some MPs are divided on whether caucus should appoint a new leader or if a full leadership convention should be held. The MP said there's been pushback from the Prime Minister's office on calls for Trudeau to resign. I wonder where that pushback is coming from. Captain Schmuck himself. They said they didn't understand how Trudeau's team believed he had a path to stay on. Some Liberal MPs called for Trudeau to resign in the fall after the party lost 2 normally safe seats in Toronto and Montreal in by-elections. So they just lost another one in Cloverdale in Langley, BC. Things are not getting better for Trudeau. I mean, I just showed in the previous video, they're projected to get 6 seats now, and they're at historic lows, a 16% approval rating. But those calls intensified after Chrystia Freeland resigned as finance minister. She was fired. She resigned from taking another position is basically what happened there. And deputy prime minister. That's important to note because we don't have a deputy prime minister right now. This is turning into a big clown show at this point. And somewhere we're seeing this now is in America. In America, they rarely talk about Canada, but we've become big news in America. Now there's panels talking about what is going on in our country. This has been quite prevalent on Fox News recently.
It could be the greatest merger of all time or a geopolitical disaster. Shark Tank star and proud Canadian Kevin O'Leary is making a stunning claim that half of his fellow Canucks, that's about 20 million people, are open to President-elect Trump's bold pitch to make Canada the 51st state. And he's even willing to go down to Mar-a-Lago to help broker the deal.
I think that claim is a bit exaggerated. I mean, there was a poll showing it was like 83% of Canadians didn't want to merge with America. So I think he's kind of pulling that one out of his butt.
Canadians over the holidays, the last 2 days, have been talking about this. They want to hear more. Think about the power of combining the two economies, erasing the border between Canada and the United States and putting all that resource up to the northern borders where China and Russia are knocking on the door. So secure that, give a common currency, figure out taxes across the board, get everything trading both ways, create a new almost EU-like passport. I like this idea, and at least half of Canadians are interested.
I actually really like that idea as long as we just keep our countries separate, but have a much more open border and open trade, but not to the point where policies in America are dictated in Canada. And like, that's where it gets kind of muddy. I said it before, with good leadership, our country will absolutely be amazing. It'll be like a lot of these Norwegian countries where they don't have income tax because they've just increased oil and gas production, or they've made their countries rich in other ways that they're not taxing the heck out of their own population. And the countries that do have high income tax, they end up giving free education, all these benefits. It's like we are paying all the price, but we're getting none of the benefits. And all those benefits we should be getting, Justin Trudeau is shuffling those out the door. They're going to McKinsey. They're going to, anything I show on the far off ripoff, Global Affairs Canada, Uganda, wherever, China. It's not going to us.
And that's not the only person showing up at Mar-a-Lago. Two top Canadian cabinet members are meeting with Trump's team and border czar Tom Homan today. They aim to hammer out a border security plan that Canada hopes will ward off Trump's threats to impose economically damaging tariffs on imports. Homan is telling Fox that Canada is, quote, ready to go on immigration enforcement, and Trump himself has made it clear where he stands.
Essentially, we're paying Canada, and we love Canada. I have so many friends there. I love Canada. I love it. But why are we spending $150 billion on Canada? Yet Canada allows people and drugs to flood in through our northern border.
So I caught your face as I was talking, and it wasn't just because I called Kevin O'Leary Ken. What do you think about this merger idea, Tyrus?
I think both of his watches are broken. Like, okay, there's no 50% of Canadians willing to give up Canada. I mean, that's their country. That'd be like 50% of Americans being like, oh, yeah, we want to join the other side.
It might be 50% of Canadians interested in having like an EU passport, but not 50% of Canadians say, let's just give up Canada and become America. I don't think those numbers would be that high.
It almost sounds like a promotional stunt for a TV show. I think the Canadian government is paying attention because President Trump is putting tariffs. He's trolling them. He's having a good time with it. And maybe Mr. Wonderful is trying to get in on it. But 50%, I'd love to see the poll. Like, it goes back to what this administration is trying to do is not a laughing matter. President Trump is putting his foot down and he's using tariffs to get them to come to the table. I think there's a huge conservative presence in Canada, but we haven't seen it for a long time. And let's be honest, if Canada became a country that will play along with this game, okay, it would be, they're one of the most liberal countries, which means the 2 Senate seats that they would have would make Jessica's day because they would both be liberal and would lose the Senate. So thank you, no, we're good.
Trump is getting his desired effect, right? People are coming. He's holding court there. He has a transition team down there. But this is pretty high stakes in terms of trade with Canada. So they buy 300 billion of our goods. We buy about 340 billion of their goods. Last I checked, the USMCA was negotiated by Trump 1.0. So where do you think we end up in all of this, Katie?
Well, we may end up with an additional trade deal that the president believes is better for the American people. But the bottom line is, even if there aren't as many people in Canada who want to give up the country, there are a lot of people that the new administration can work with in Canada, common sense on the economy, to get to the table and at least change some things that he doesn't like that they've seen happening over the past 4 years.
I like that she mentioned the 300 and 340 billion because that's what it really is. The trading relationship between Canada and America is pretty equal. It bounces back and forth. One year Canada's got more, and next year America's got more, but it's pretty on par, and it always kind of seems to make up. It's not one country, in this case, Canada, always winning. It really is just a trolling technique. I think he knows that. Trump knows that, because if Canada cut off the oil going to America, they'd be screwed.
I find it very interesting that these ministers who have flown down to Mar-a-Lago after Trudeau flew down there himself to have a one-on-one meeting, are meeting with Tom Homan, who is the new border czar. So Trump is not only using tariffs as a way to push for more border security and to combat fentanyl and to combat terrorism and terrorists who come across the northern border, which is the longest border in the world. And so it's very interesting to see how they're using the economics to push on other issues, not just the trade deficit and maybe a new trade deal that Trump may want for the country.
Yeah, Joey, I want to pick up on that with Tom Homan. He seems to have become really a central player in this transition. And you have Democrats and Republicans that are talking to him. You have Mayor Adams here in New York City, had a meeting with him. Do you think that the Canadians being ready to play ball so quickly, so they have a new border security bill to invest another $1 billion in this, they clearly know that it's a central plank of Trump's platform and what he wants to do moving forward. They're also all up for re-election. Right. And Trudeau is forecasted to lose. Do you think they're foreseeing a Trump-like movement north of the border as well and trying to stamp that out?
I think you've seen it throughout the Western world in some ways. And I don't know if it's Trump-like. I define Trump as a make America great again, make North America great again now as popular.
It's a conservative movement, but the problem is there's just been too much woke stupid nonsense across all of these Western countries. You see it in France and England, in America and Canada, in Australia. And the people have had enough. The people have been enduring of this stupid woke nonsense, and we've had enough now. So it's not a Trumpism. It's just coming back to common sense is what it really is.
Populism is mainstream populism. It's an opportunity for people to feel heard and seen, and to feel like you're not speaking for us as some big corporation that puts a movie out with an agenda, one way or the other. You're not speaking for us if your version of DEI puts a disadvantage towards, my kid that's white and male. And so that I don't think is conservatism. I think it's common sense. And I think that that's what you see sweeping across most places that have any form of representative democracy. But when it comes to Canada specifically, when you look at the list of things that we import at high levels, kind of towards the top of the list is oil and gas. You can go all the way back. The Keystone Pipeline, I believe, was Canadian oil and gas. Mm-hmm. So if President Trump is going to drill, baby, drill in Alaska, and he's going to keep our energy cheap and make us energy independent again, he can't tariff oil and gas and get that accomplished probably, or at least not immediately. So if he does this, and the other one is vehicles, and he's spoken to and a lot about Detroit and the vehicles that are made in this country and in Mexico and in other places. So I would predict that if tariffs were the way, chances are some of these things are carved out anyway. But I mean, the truth is he doesn't want an econ war. He doesn't want a trade war. He wants a secure border. He wants to fulfill his main promise, which is to keep bad things and bad people out of our country as much as possible. And I don't understand how Canada can't be a partner in that. So I don't know why it would have to get to the point of tariffs to begin with.
Yeah, this is pretty spot on. It can't get to tariffs, or it's just going to obliterate both our countries. There's so many auto parts that go back and forth between Ontario and Michigan and the other states around there building cars. They're not going to, tariff it every time it goes back and forth 11 times. That'd be crazy. As one report said, it would increase the cost of a car by $20,000. Trump just wants to see action. Is that $1.3 billion that Dominic LeBlanc has put forward over the next 6 years, starting next year, enough? Who knows?
But that is where he started with all of this.
Yeah.
Right? With the 25%.
Yes. And that was the point, to have an economic impact quickly that is obviously beneficial to Americans. And I agree with Tyrus. I don't think that there are 50% of Canadians who are like, we don't want any national independence at all. We don't want our own identity. We just want to be like the cold, forgotten part of America where people maybe go see Vancouver once every 5 years. I don't think they're dying for that either. But I do have faith that these Canadian conservatives do want a better way of life. Canada has some really manly men, and they are forgotten because they're represented by Justine Trudeau, who wanted to give Americans a lecture that, we failed because we didn't elect Kamala and we didn't elect Hillary. Well, that's because American voters rationally looked at these two candidates and said, maybe they don't represent my personal interests. And they look at Donald Trump and they go, I like some of the things he has to say. I'm going to give him a shot once again. But the difference is there are a lot of Americans who want their politicians to work with Donald Trump, not just work against him. And I think that might be how a lot of Canadians feel, but they also want the agreement to benefit their lives economically and in every other way possible. If that means that it's easier to travel between the United States and Canada, that's fantastic. I do think this president wants a secure border. I think that he's trolling. He doesn't want a 51st state, because if you want a secure border, the first thing you do is not dissolve it. So I think people are taking some of his jokes too literally.
How did we say it in the first term? Like, never take him literally.
Seriously, but not literally.
Seriously, but not literally.
Yes.
The 47th president.
That point there was actually spot on. Trump's not going to want to dissolve the border if he wants border security, unless that means expanding the border up to the north and having Canada join America. But he's just trolling. This isn't a real serious conversation. A lot of the news media like to pretend it is, and it's just becoming a joke upon a joke at this point. In other news here, we've got a police officer wounded after an attacker was shot to non-existence after excavator rampage in Heilbronn, Germany. So this guy basically took an excavator and was just wreaking havoc in the streets here. no need to worry. The authorities have said that the attacker was mentally ill, like all others. There seems to be no end to this, does there? Do Europeans have any interest in self-defense whatsoever? What makes someone snap and think, I know, I'll use an excavator and ram into cars? Who knows? We've also got this one here. So we've got these friendly characters. They blocked the road in front of the Israeli consulate in Montreal. Hamas loyalists did this past weekend. Do they realize how dirty those streets are? Like, really? That's gross. I mean, put my face on the street. Not to mention, you're blocking major infrastructure. I've already mentioned this numerous times on the channel. That is against the law. These cops should be rounding up these people and putting them in jail for blocking infrastructure, roads, cityways. You can't just start preying on the street. That's not how this works in this country. This is insane. Canada is lost. Blast death metal. That would be a legal way of fighting back against this. You could show up with a big boombox with some death metal or whatever kind of music. That would be within the law. But then again, if a Canadian did that, they'd probably get arrested because Canadians don't get prioritized in Canada. On this episode of Far Off Ripoff, we've got Trudeau spending $5 million of our hard-earned tax dollars on project aims to support Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Panama, and Peru in their efforts to protect their unique marine biodiversity, coastal communities, and local communities, specifically women, Indigenous peoples, and Afro-descendants. It does so through innovative Canadian satellite technology to support monitoring and enforcement efforts in reducing the threats posed by illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing activities such as overfishing. We don't even have proper policing in our own country. I mean, I just showed down the last video, the same jewelry store got robbed twice in 2 weeks. And when we're sending our money over to these countries to help with overfishing, you know, this issue should be addressed, but it's like, why are we spending our money in Panama, Colombia, Costa Rica, etc. with overfishing when we can't even catch the bank robbers, the car thieves in our own country? I mean, I've got one here. Look at this. Car lands on top of Tesla after crash on westbound. I showed one the other day. A little girl, 9 years old, perished because a guy stole a car from a pharmacy and then went on a high-speed chase and crashed into a car and a little girl died. Where's our money being spent on this stuff? Well, we spend it in overfishing in Panama.